For something is amiss or out of place when mice with wings can wear a human face. The Bat by Theodore Roethke. Hello once again, I'm Don Jackson. Finally, the heedless night did plunge down amongst the thick trunks of the trees, and I was picking my way, counting on the instincts of my horse more than on my own failing vision. The pale half-moon seemed in love with the clouds. An excerpt from Vittorio the Vampire by Anne Rice, a Borzoi book. The old saying goes, as blind as a bat. The saying is no doubt due to the echolocation system that they use, but they can see in the night. The bats are anything but blind, and contrary to popular belief, they will not fly into your hair. Naturally, we begin in Gotham City. It's where we will find the heartbeat of the internet. The original Batman movie starred Michael Keaton. It premiered on June 23, 1989. Was it really that long ago? For my money, the best Batman in Gotham City, but Christian Bale ran a very close second. Someone else agreed with the pick of Michael Keaton because some years back, that person bid $60,000 in an auction for the costume he wore. And now it's going to be Ben Affleck. And we'll soon see if he can live up to the legacy. Bats are one of the oldest living creatures on the planet, according to a very old source of mine. Bats are an old established order of mammals. Their fossil remains are known from Eocene times, about 60 million years ago. The earliest known picture of a bat is in a tomb in Egypt. It was made about 2000 BC. The powers of both good and evil were thought to exist in bats many, many years ago. They were used as charms and in magic to keep away misfortune. They were also used to bring harm to others. Likewise, bats were used in many forms of medicine to cure various ills. The only mammal that can fly is the bat, and there are more than 2,000 kinds of bats. Some are small, with a 6-inch wing spread, while the largest have almost a 6-foot wing spread. End quote. And that sounds just about right for Bruce Wayne's alter ego. Superman was seen by day and night, was costumed in bright colors, and of course, he fought for truth, justice, and the American way. Batman was a cloaked, hooded figure that only seemed to come out at night. The TV series starring Adam West and Burt Ward was a parody, and I think did the character a great injustice. The Tim Burton film and a few of the others that followed were, in essence, a dark vision that closely mirrored the original comic book character. Set against the backdrop of large, grimy buildings and creepy back alleys in the dead of night. This was the version that made film-goers believers once again. According to the Time Life series, The Enchanted World, in the volume titled Night Creatures, and I quote, "Swooping and swerving as they hunted by night, bats struck fear in the hearts of humankind. They were furred like beasts, yet winged like birds, and in between nature, believed to link them to old magic. Some folks said that bats were the ghosts of the unburied dead, or of criminals, or those who trafficked with devils. Others concluded that they were witches in disguise, or even cloaks for Satan himself when he went traveling. In the Austrian Tyrol, it was said that a person who acquired a bat's left eye could become invisible at will. End quote. In the movies, he moved from rooftop to rooftop with ease and watched over the city he swore to protect. And he also was looking for the killer of his parents. That's the comic book legend, but there are myths and legends as old as humankind about bats, and even some lessons to be learned from this creature of the night. Let's go high over the city. Wet earth, random flowers, mingling, rattling leaves in the wet summer air. All the night songs. Scent of the river only 8 blocks from here over the Irish Channel, where a train whistle cut the night, leading the distant soft roar of boxcars. The cicadas died down suddenly, but the song of the tree frogs was strong. And there were the night birds, which only a vampire could hear. An excerpt from Blood Canticle, The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. We may have an aversion to bats, but we do buy the books and line up to see the films that deal with vampires. There was one in theaters a little while back that was pretty intense and graphic. The Joker was back in that one. It was the last role for actor Heath Ledger. There has been talk that the role affected him deeply. Jack Nicholson last portrayed the Joker in an earlier film. It was a role that Cesar Romero played in the camp TV series. Out of them all, you can't watch Ledger and not wonder at what he must have put himself through to bring this dark version to life. We're in late October. Halloween is on the horizon. I featured a few programs as we get close to this ancient festival. This webcast is another in that series, with lessons eventually to be learned from the bat. Come into the garden, Maud, for the black bat night has flown. Come into the garden, Maud, I am here at the gate alone. Alfred Lord Tennyson in a song from Maud. The Twilight saga, in books as well as movies, have generated real interest in the romantic legend associated with the vampire myth. Vampire Diaries on television also brings the legend into the present, and also HBO's True Blood. But if you really want to go back in time, it probably was Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its spin-off Angel that really got TV audiences interested in the modern-day vampire. To the ancient Egyptians, night was the mother of everything. However, to those suffering from a broken heart, night can feel like a shroud that descends around the spirit. In one telling of the Dracula legend, he seems to have been a grief-stricken character, bemoaning the loss of the great love of his life. It starred Gary Oldman as the vampire, Winona Ryder as the love interest, and Keanu Reeves portrayed Jonathan Harker, and the movie stayed close to the original story. But for the most romantic portrayal, you would have to go back in time to a black and white classic. Who among us could ever forget Bela Lugosi in his evening clothes, his soft, melodic voice that wooed the women? There are very few creatures of the night that had such a depth of character as the one portrayed by Lugosi. It was his one crowning achievement on screen. He would never eclipse this portrayal in any other role that he would take on during his long film career. But it wasn't the only part he was offered. According to the book Hollywood Trivia by David P. Strauss and Fred L. Worth, and I quote, Bela Lugosi turned down the part of the monster in the 1931 classic Frankenstein because there were no lines, and he thought the makeup was uncomplimentary. Many times Walt Disney used actual models as cartoon characters for his films. For the model of the Black God in the night in the Bald Mountain sequence in 1940's Fantasia, Bela Lugosi was used as the model. According to the book Celebrity Trivia by Edward Lucaire, and I quote, Lugosi's real name was Bela Ferenc Desko Blasko. He was born in Lugos, Hungary, part of Transylvania, from which he took his professional surname, Lugosi. Boris Karloff got the role of Frankenstein, but later grew tired of it, and Lugosi played the Frankenstein monster in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in 1943. It is hard for Americans to believe this, but Bela Lugosi was once a leading man, and a romantic lead at that, on the Hungarian stage. Later, as an established star in Hollywood, he used to claim that he was the John Barrymore of Hungary. Although Lugosi's screen roles often required that he drink the blood of his victims, in real life, he became ill at the sight of his own blood and would often pass out. End quote. It is interesting to note that it was on October 20th, 1884, that Bela Lugosi was born. He died August 16th, 1956. He was buried in the very same costume that his character wore when Dracula retired every day at sunrise into a coffin filled with the earth of Transylvania. At the end of the 19th century, a disturbed and melodramatic author, Abraham Stoker, gets hold of the name Dracula and fastens it on a creature of his own invention, a vampire. Stoker assembled some useful lore about vampire legends, about Transylvania too, without ever going there. In the 20th century, Hollywood takes over, and the myth lives on, resurrected. That's an excerpt from the novel The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. It is a popular novel reinventing the Dracula myth, for that's what Hollywood and authors have done over and over again, reinvent the myth, and we keep on believing. I was imagining a clear autumn morning in 1476, a morning just cool enough to make mist rise from the surface of the lake. A boat runs aground at the edge of the island, below the walls and domes with their iron crosses. There is a gentle scraping of a wooden bow on rocks, and two monks hurry out from beneath the trees to pull it ashore. The man who steps out of it is alone, and the feet he sets on the stone embankment are clad in finely made boots of red leather, each with a sharp spur clamped to it. He is shorter than both of the young monks, but seems to tower over them. He is dressed in purple and red damask under a long black velvet cloak, which is pinned across his broad chest with an elaborate brooch. His hat is a pointed cone, black with red feathers fastened to the front. His hand, heavily scarred across the back, fiddles with the short sword at his belt. His eyes are green, preternaturally large and wide-set. His mouth and nose cruel, and his black hair and mustache show coarser white strands. The abbot has been notified already and hurries to meet him under the trees. "We are honored, my lord," he says, extending his hand. Dracula kisses his ring, and the abbot makes the sign of the cross over him. "Bless you, my son," he adds. as if in spontaneous thanksgiving." End quote. Another excerpt from the novel by Elizabeth Kostova called The Historian. I really enjoyed the book. It is a sweeping romantic saga that actually takes us deep into the heart of the myth itself. Henry Van Dyke, from his volume Collected Poems, wrote, "For love is but the heart's immortal thirst to be completely known and all forgiven." The characters in the Anne Rice novel Interview with the Vampire and all of its many sequels in the beginning are intrigued with the idea of immortality. To live forever and a day, they think, would be fantastic. Never to become sick, never to grow old and die. The reality, though, is much different from the fantasy. Being immortal means living a very long, lonely life. And it's not just Anne Rice who mused on the pitfalls of living forever. In all these stories, the people, the immortals come to love, inevitably grow old and die, leaving the immortals alone once more to wander the earth in search of someone else to take some of the loneliness away. But just for a while, and the process repeats itself all over again. Time can be an eternity for those who get left behind, and you don't have to be an immortal to feel the ache of being a survivor. New Orleans has a rich history that seems to get lost in all the revelry at Mardi Gras time. It also has a dark past. It's said that vampires roam the streets. Late one night during our time in New Orleans in 1999, Lydia and I met others on the concrete steps of the old cathedral in Jackson Square, and had a guide lead us on a walking tour of some of the famed haunts of these creatures of the night. No wonder the novelist Anne Rice chose to set her vampire chronicles in this old city. We visited a small nightclub that was said to be the haunt of vampires. New Orleans has a very old connection to the vampire myth. It was eerie being in there, wondering if one of these creatures was sitting off in the shadows. There were elegantly dressed individuals, others who prefer the goth culture, and even a few in t-shirts and jeans. We were told any one of them could be a vampire. On the tour, we were accompanied by a guide by the name of Vlad, dressed in dark evening clothes, top hat, and tails. And it was amazing considering the heat and humidity of the city. He was supposedly our protection on the walking tour, and I didn't give him a second thought. From time to time, he would disappear for a while, only to appear to great theatrical effect off to our left under a lone street lamp. The guide we were with pointed out another location, and it seemed within a matter of a few seconds off to the right of the tour group, this man in dark clothes appeared again under another lone street lamp. How he passed us without our seeing him in just a few seconds still baffles my mind. I have posted a photo of him and me on my Facebook page, along with the home Anne Rice lived in when she resided in New Orleans. You might remember the movie version of her first novel that starred Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt that was filmed in the Big Easy. Lydia and I visited the cemetery where some of the outdoor scenes were filmed. It was on November the 11th, 1994, when Interview with the Vampire premiered in theaters. Here's another myth about the dark and the light. This time, the myth was born in Africa. It was retold by Catherine Komaroff in a book she wrote back in the 70s called Sky Gods, the Sun and Moon in Art and Myth, and it was about the bat. It serves as a lesson to us all to never treat our responsibilities lightly. Komaroff writes, "In the beginning, the world was never really dark or cold. The sun shone during the day, and the moon gave twilight to the night. One day, God asked the bat to carry a covered basket filled with darkness to the moon. He said that the bat should not ask why, but should just do as he was told. Later, God himself would go to the moon to explain what to do with the basket. On his way, however, the bat became hungry and tired, and he stopped. He put the basket down and ventured off to look for food. While he was gone, some animals found the basket sitting by the side of the road. They were overcome with curiosity and opened the basket, letting darkness escape throughout the world. As soon as he saw the darkness, the bat realized at once that he was responsible. In an effort to be forgiven for his grave mistake, he now sleeps during the day and flies madly around at night, trying to catch darkness and deliver it to the moon. But he has never succeeded. And because he did not realize the importance of his God-given task, darkness still covers the whole world." End quote. It's a good myth to consider now that we're in the dark time of the year. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.